It's Thursday, April 4th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, we get ready for Town Council tonight, learn more about Cape Light Compact's local green power supply, and talk about community by design housing in Hyannis. Now for a look at municipal news and notes. Barnstable County is seeking nominations for its annual Mercy Otis Warren Cape Cod Woman of the Year Award. It will be presented to a woman who has demonstrated leadership in the Cape Cod community and has made some significant contributions to the following: the arts, education, business community, involvement, and volunteerism on the local level while embracing the ideals of patriotism. The nomination deadline is April 15th. Help someone you know get the recognition they deserve. Town Council President Jim Crocker joins us in studio to highlight some of the capital budget items on the agenda for the meeting tonight. Another week, and it's another Town Council meeting. With me today, Town Council President Jim Crocker, and this is a pretty big meeting, Jim. We're right into budget season, and we're going to go in with a bang, aren't we?
Watch out, we're going to spend some money here. Thank you for having me again. It's great to have a chance to talk about it. We have an unusual situation where the capital improvement portion of the budget comes out first. Looks like we're running up $34 million. And 54 projects that will have to be identified and approved by the council before funding is available for them next year.
All right. So the agenda is posted on the Town of Barnstable's website, so if people want specific information about projects, that is up there. Give us a little background on how these capital improvement projects made it to the budget.
Well, I got to tell you, hats off to management and to the staff that supports them. They do a very complex measure to try to rate the projects that every department would love to see funded from their area. So obviously we have a litany of services that go back to the community, whether it's road, sewer, water infrastructure, schools are always a demand for us. So there's always, everybody comes forward with more projects than money we have. And then the rating process is done and endured by staff. And then they try to put it into a box that makes sense for the total amount spent. And don't forget, right after that, we got operational monies, which are the bread and butter of our town operations.
Right. So let's take a little bit. We'll do two, because right off the top, the school budget school committee meets has met Wednesday night. You'll get everything ready to go on Thursday night. Talk a little bit about some of these capital improvement projects for the school.
Well, the school has always got their share of the budget under operations,
right.
and really it's 60% or a little better. And so it's a huge operating budget to begin with, and they also have to endure quite a rigorous process to ensure that they're meeting all the standards that are required by the state, as well as their own personal needs for the many properties they own. What seems to be forefront is trying to clean up some of the issues for construction and some of for buildings, and some of the issues for field maintenance, which is always long overdue. And that's really the nuts and bolts of this. They will come on first, and they'll be followed by the airport, and then the general funding will be available for us.
Right. So some of the school projects that I noticed on the agenda, just to let people know, you know, HVAC systems.
It's a boring one, isn't it?
It's a boring one, but people don't realize that those systems, you know, even though they're maintained, sometimes have to be replaced, and they're costly.
Yes, and people recognize that energy codes change. So what we're talking about is bringing a lot of this up to snuff, so the capital cost of carrying the equipment once it's installed, it also alleviates some of the expenses to the schools. So they always have these heavy decisions between how far can I go in a energy-friendly piece of equipment versus how much I can afford to spend right at this point. So those thresholds are always tested in any new equipment in the HVAC or electrical side.
Right, and the other ones that I saw is a couple of school roofs.
Yeah, we can't get away from that. You know, whenever you have a flat roof and you really enjoy the sun like we do for certain parts of the seasons, the roofs move and contract, and so there's always a damage and an effect there. And secondarily, we always have vendors up on the roof from time to time to work with some of the equipment that comes from ahead, which is a loft. A lot of times the HVAC. Right. So you can really doing good work can incur some difficult accidents on the roof as well.
Right.
So we have to be careful.
And the field maintenance is ongoing. There
Field
was
maintenance-
a big one last year, and
Yeah.
now this is coming into the second phase of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a multi-prong effect
Right.
at the high school is the
Right.
one I'm talking about right at this point, because we are looking at returfing the football field. At the same time, they just opened bids for the new area for turf around the baseball fields, dugouts, and concession stand. So there'll be some juggling there because we're trying to tell them they got to hold a tight line. If it's a one-year item, it might have to be a two-year item if we don't have all the money for the desires. But in construction, you can't get to a point where you open up the ground, open up the utilities, whatever is done, and not complete that task. There is no way that it's any cheaper than the present moment. So there's always an adjustment on construction projects.
And then let's come to the airport. You know, Barnstable has a municipal airport. It's an economic driver for our town. Some of these projects are in conjunction with the FAA. There's funds available. Talk a little bit about that so people understand.
Well, the exciting part of it is this part of the year for two reasons. This part of the year, we're preparing for the funding for the airport for next year. Don't forget our year starts in July 1. So what they're looking at is projects that start July 1, which will be the fiscal year 2020 for the town. But it's also a time, as you may have saw from the last meeting, where if we have a reserve, and this is why we're so insistent that the airport carry a reserve, projects that have not passed mustered with the FAA that were scheduled by other towns, the FAA calls up the good airports who still have a reserve and says to them, geez, guys, if you really had something you would like to slide on, we just had this funding open up because of someone's failure to make the match or meet. So when we have good, prudent fiscal policy at the airport, we not only win on the projects going forward in the next year, but at the end of the year, we have a chance to pick up a couple projects. FAA generally reimburses somewhere up to the 90% area.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of information over there as well with buildings and
Yes.
the tarmacs and the runways. Those, you know, you can't just lay down asphalt and have it bake in the sun for 20 years and think that it's going to last.
No, and when you expand your runways, when you expand your programs, what does it do for landing fees? What does it do for gasoline fees? They're all tied together, and the discussions are greater than you might think. Gasoline is one of their largest income-producing properties, but do you get, you raise your gas 5 cents and all of a sudden there's other regional airports that they go to. So it's a real delicate balance, and we're asking them continually to look at it, but they're working very well in conjunction with our finance director, Mark Mill.
Right. And then you have the general at the end of that, which, you know.
Whatever's left,
whatever's left.
we councilors get to fight for, right?
Right. Is there anything there that you see that will come to light in this meeting on tonight?
I doubt if we'll really get to the general, because as I
Right.
said, that will be the third step. I will say that there's been a number of people making phone calls around pickleball. Pickleball is really becoming quite a popular sport, and Barnstable hasn't done enough to create that opportunity. So if the room is as busy as I believe it may be for pickleball, we may be taking that out of order to try to satisfy the people who are asking. We're talking about changing some of the courts over off of Osterville, West Barnstable Road into pickleball courts.
Oh,
And that's out there for funding. But the general fund is always addressing sewer. Sewer's always first in these recent years. Sewer, water projects, and always we have the big road issues because we have so many roads that we're trying to care for, even though they're not all public roads.
Excellent.
So there's,
All right,
there's a
well,
whole bunch.
get some rest, and we'll see you tonight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Cape Light Compact has launched a new program, CLC Local Green, which provides power supply program customers with two choices for supporting locally generated renewable power. Austin Brandt, Senior Power Supply Planner, shares the details. We talk a lot about saving money and saving energy, but wouldn't you like to save money, energy, and go green at the same time? With me today, Austin Brandt, Senior Power Supply Planner from Cape Light Compact. You have some really great news out of the Compact.
Absolutely. So the Compact, we just launched last month our CLC Local Green program. So what CLC Local Green program is a power supply program for people that want to contribute to local renewable energy based right here in New England and even on Cape Cod. And they want to be able to do that through their power supply bill that they pay every month that comes through the Eversource bill. So for the power that they're using in their homes or businesses, they could be matching that with renewable energy produced right here in New England.
That is, I mean, that's really a fantastic way to, kind of do your part, as people say. Every village, every town kind of has to take a look at what they're producing out there for fossil fuels, and then really, wow, renewable energy right here on Cape Cod Vineyard Wind's coming in. So talk a little bit about the process. How does this work?
Sure. So every month you get an electricity bill from Eversource, and that bill has two sides, as we've talked about before. There's a distribution side and a supply side, or a generation side, it's sometimes called. So the distribution side is the charges that Eversource charges you for delivering the power that you buy to your homes or businesses. But the supply side is what you're actually paying for that electricity that's flowing over those wires. And on the supply side, you can choose who your supplier is. And so what CLC Local Green is a supply option where for every kilowatt hour you use, we will make sure that 1 kilowatt hour is being produced from a renewable resource here in New England. So that's things like wind and solar that are based in New England that are producing energy that is replenishing the energy that you're using from the grid.
Okay, so how does that work? We hear the word SRECs and RECs. What are those?
Sure, a REC stands for Renewable Energy Certificate. And renewable energy certificates are a way to track the production and use of renewable energy. So electricity is really interesting in that you don't know where your electrons that you're using are coming from at your meter. So they could be coming from wind, solar, natural gas, nuclear. There's a whole mix of resources that feed into our regional power grid that may be contributing to your particular home's power at that given time. So because you can't track what you use or what type of energy you're using at the point you're using it, you actually have to track it at the point you're producing it. So RECs, renewable energy certificates, are one way to do that. So the way a REC works is if you have a wind turbine, say, and it's producing energy, that electricity, those electrons are flowing to the grid. But at the same time that it's producing that electricity, it's also producing a REC. So for every 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity generated by a qualified renewable resource, such as wind or solar, it also produces 1 renewable energy certificate. And so what happens is suppliers, electricity suppliers, are required by the state to purchase a certain amount of these as a percentage of the load that they serve. So let's say, for instance, it's 20%, I'm making up that number. For every 1,000 kilowatt hours they sell, or excuse me, for every 1,000,000 kilowatt hours they sell, they have to buy 200,000 RECs. So there's a market for RECs, there's demand for them. And when you're developing a renewable energy project, you count on that demand for those RECs to help finance your project, because it is expensive to develop projects, especially here in New England. So as a consumer, in order to use renewable energy, like we said earlier, your actual electricity could be coming from a variety of resources. But if you want to claim that you're using 50% or 100% renewable energy, what you need to do is, based on the amount that you're actually using in terms of electricity on an annual basis, you need to purchase RECs equal to the percentage that you want to claim. So if you're using 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, you want to buy 10 RECs to meet 100% of your usage and claim 100% renewable energy. So what CLC Local Green does is it simplifies that process for people. So for every 1,000 if you're a CLC Local Green 100% customer, so you're matching 100% with local Massachusetts Class 1 RECs, what we will do is for every 1,000 kilowatt hours you use, we're going to buy and retire 1 REC. And what that does is this is giving people a way to support local renewable energy without putting solar on their home, which not everyone can do, and by paying a few extra cents each day on your power supply side of your bill.
Right. So that's the cost here. So when we talk about buying from different sources, Eversource or Cape Light Compact or some of these other companies that are out there, the difference in cost of kilowatt hour for this green energy isn't really that significant.
It's not, but if you look at, on a per kilowatt hour basis, it is not significant. But when you look at a monthly basis, it does add some material cost. And so that's why our board and the staff was very careful about how we rolled out our CLC green aggregation, our standard offering. But we realize that there are people out there that want to do more and can do more through the power supply side of their bill to support renewable energy, and that's why we created this option for people to opt into that want to do that, to have that option available to them to not just support renewable energy at the national level, but also at the local level here in New England.
Right, and does this roll out to just residential, or does it roll out to the business side as well?
Any residential or business customer can participate.
What's the benefits to this to, I guess, climate change and the larger, give me a larger picture. Why should we do this?
Sure, so building energy usage accounts for a large portion of energy usage as a whole. So transportations and buildings are two of the biggest ones. And as we see electric vehicles become more popular, and as we electrify our grid for heating and cooling purposes, those two sectors are going to account for a greater piece of our total electricity usage. And so when you're using more and more electricity, you want to make sure that that electricity is coming from renewable sources. And this power supply program and others that are using greater than the required amount of renewable energy are contributing to that, because what they're doing is they're sending a market signal that there's demand for renewable energy. People want renewable energy, and if you build a project, it's going to get financed in part by those people that are looking for renewable energy on their bill.
Wow. I would imagine there's also economic drivers here as well. This is an emerging industry with all sorts of innovation. It's not just wind turbines now and you know, some panels on your roof. There's all sorts of different technologies that are producing wind and solar as well.
Absolutely, yep. And so these RECs, as we mentioned earlier, they account for a significant piece of the financial puzzle when you're looking at how to develop renewable energy projects, and they are an important driver of renewable energy on an economic basis. And so aggregations like ours, people that are participating in our CLC Local Green program, and other aggregations across Massachusetts, and even other just private power supply options that offer extra renewable energy, are really helping drive this market above and beyond what the state is doing through its renewable portfolio standard, that minimum amount that's required.
That's fantastic. How do people find out more or get signed up for this?
So we have information on our website, capelightcompact.org. You can also call our power supply number, 1-800-381-9192, to sign up. To participate in CLC Local Green, you do have to be a Cape Light Compact power supply customer. So if you already are a Cape Light Compact power supply customer, it's easy to enroll in CLC Local Green. If you're not, you can just enroll in our power supply program and enroll in CLC Green at the same time.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The east end of Main Street could be a community by design. Our Planning and Development Department has the details. Housing. It's always a topic here in the town of Barnstable. But what do you want your neighborhoods to look like, especially downtown? Community by design. Arden, you've joined me today to kind of talk about a couple of public meetings that you've held and then some designs that have come out of that. It's fascinating to see what people have kind of like thought what their neighborhoods would look like.
That's exactly it. That was the goal of this project. We had a public meeting, and then we had an online visual survey. And from that input, from that information, our consultants created model design forms that would be appropriate for the neighborhood, keeping in the character of the neighborhood and what the residents said was preferable for them. So they were able to create model forms based on that input.
Right, and this started a while back. So back in December, there was the first meeting. You could take a survey, kind of look at some images of different types of housing, different ways that they went up, and then these public meetings that you held as well. Tell us a little bit about those and what came out of those.
Yeah, so the first meeting was to gather the input from the residents, and then the second meeting was to present the information that they had developed from that first public meeting. So it was the second meeting was great. It presented designs and sizes of units, and then they visually put them on parcels to show us what that would look like, to show us how it would infill in the neighborhood. We created a study area of the east end of Hyannis, but we know that these styles would probably be appropriate for most of Hyannis. Yeah, so it was visual, I think, is really a different and nice way to present information to the community.
Sure. And the survey piece of it I thought was very interesting as well, that what came out of that? Were there any surprises, or was it the standard, you know, duplex or?
Yeah, I was a little surprised about the lack of desire for height.
Okay.
You know, 2.5 stories was fine. 3.5 we started to lose some support for, even though we can point to some examples that already exist that are above that. So they were, yeah, about 3 stories would be acceptable. Modern design is not acceptable here. The real benefit of this study was they are doing it in 3 other communities, and we were able to compare those results to the other communities. Eastham seemed to be a little more acceptable to modern design forms.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe they have some of those examples out there, where we were very traditional here, very Cape Cod, standard styles that you would expect. So not too many surprises. You know, maybe I was hoping for acceptance of a little more larger form, taller buildings.
Right. And what's kind of like the norms of the Union Studio? So they come in, and this was done in conjunction with the Cape Cod Commission.
It was.
They're doing multiple areas of the Cape to kind of get a general idea of buy-in from people.
Sure, so we're trying to get the buy-in now up front,
Right.
so that we can change the zoning so that this will be allowed by right in this area, which makes it much easier for developers to then develop housing. There's a much more assurity that you're going to get this approved. So our next phase of this project is we have grant funds, and we're going to hire another consultant to help us revise the zoning that will allow for what the residents have told us is preferable to them. And then it makes the permitting process much easier, and the hope and the goal is that we will create additional housing stock that, again, fits the character of the neighborhood.
And it's kind of interesting to me that, you know, we've gone pendulum swings of, you know, a house on 2 acres kind of thing to, you know, downtown living. You know, some of our millennials and our younger professionals really want that downtown experience. So it surprises me as well that it wasn't as modern as I thought it would be.
Well, I guess part of that might be the people who are here already are answering the survey, and it's
Okay.
not necessarily people who we're trying to attract. So, you know, the market will determine that to some extent, but that's exactly what the preferences are out there for both millennials and downsizers.
Right.
You know, households that are trying to move out of that larger 2-acre, tired of mowing the lawn, want to move someplace where it's walkable to services and cultural activities. Right. So we certainly have that population here. Yeah. And then Hyannis has the benefit of sewer and water. So we're able to create that density style of units that we're not able to do in the villages.
Right, and when we talk about this housing too, this is really, you know, you've touched upon the downsizers, which I think is really something that people miss when we talk about affordable housing with a lower A, not a big A. It's really literally somebody coming out of their house, empty nesters, don't need the big house anymore, or those folks that are just starting out.
Absolutely. It's about creating choices.
Okay.
It's about creating a range of styles and sizes and price points for the range of household sizes and income levels that we have in the community. Not everybody is a 4-person household looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on a large lot. There are a variety of sizes of households, needs of households, and price points that they can afford. Right now, 83% of our housing stock is single-family homes. Doesn't provide for a variety of housing styles. Right. And at different points in your life, you need a different type of housing style, and you know, that's where our housing stock falls short.
Right. So any last words that you want residents to understand about this project and where it's going next?
Well, keep your eyes open. We'll be having some additional meetings around the zoning when we start to work on that. We'll have some check-in meetings to make sure the consultant is moving in the way that the community wants them to. So just keep your eyes open for that. This project isn't over yet, and we hope to complete it by early winter next year.
And with this project, just as an aside, what you've learned from this, will you take this to other areas of the town?
So we will take it to other areas of Hyannis. So the zoning change boundary is the growth incentive zone, which is downtown Hyannis, along with the contributing residential neighborhoods. Okay. Right now, that's the most appropriate place for this. As I said, the villages can't really accommodate the level of density because of the lack of infrastructure at this point, but it will definitely expand beyond the east end of Hyannis.
Fascinating stuff.
Great.
Thanks so much, Arden.
Thank you.
Here's a look at upcoming meetings for boards, commissions, and committees. Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. The Festival of Museums is just that, a free one-day celebration of Cape Cod's museums and galleries, with events throughout the day. Museums and galleries from all around Cape Cod are offering a fun-packed day of surprising and exciting events and activities aimed at igniting your imagination. So whether you're a mom or dad looking for something to do with the kids, a group of friends looking for a new experience, or an art or history enthusiast, come along and join in the fun at the Hyannis Youth and Community Center on Saturday, April 6th from 10 to 4. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.